So let's go into the work. I'm going to apologize up front because in this is unique to the psychoanalytic experience. I know Michael has a deep understanding of this, and this is where I try to bring this to a place where people, if they want to know more, they can learn more. This reflects these elements. First of all, the idea of transference can be tracked back to really Freud and one of his 1906 publications, in which he talks about this idea of transference and resistance are the two pillars of the psychodynamic interaction. Transference on one side, resistance on the other side. And in the polarity of these two is really where we live. So the idea of transference, people say that's a lot of baloney. Nobody's transferring anything to me. Have you ever said to yourself, or somebody said to you, you made me feel that way? No, that's interesting. I didn't make you feel anyway, but you felt that way. Why is that? Transference is a very powerful piece, and we'll talk about it. And the idea of resistance. Have you ever resisted doing something? Of course you have. Have you ever done something you didn't want to do, but did it, and didn't resist, and how uncomfortable you felt with that? So understanding transference and resistance are fundamental to the coaching relationship. People will transfer onto you and they'll resist your help. As much as you want to, they'll resist you. So transference is the experience of someone else as though they were past or present a person in your life. This gets a bad name. Oftentimes we will reflect and say, you know, Diana, you're just like my mother. Or Michael, you know, you remind me of my uncle Michael, who was a wonderful man and helped me throughout my life. The idea is that we all have this notion of people in the past who are present and are present. And the transference is you as coach are a target. You're a very easy symbol, a very easy representation to be projected on and transferred to. So as a coach, I'm in the room, and eventually someone will say, you remind me of my father. Or they'll say, you know, the jacket you're wearing, I absolutely hate it because my uncle wore one like that and I hated him too. So you can see the psychodynamic elements of that. And while not potentially fully understanding or appreciating it, understand clearly that in the room in coaching, you may not be you. You may very quickly become someone else with the power and potential inherent in that. They may hang on your every word. They may not like what you say. So the idea of just understanding that you are a representation of something else and people are transferring emotions onto you and you are in fact transferring them back. That's countertransference, but that's something else. The attitudes, feelings, and experiences towards and transferred to another person. Have you ever felt in your sessions that people are sending something to you? You may not even be aware, but suddenly unconsciously you're starting to get a feeling of being uncomfortable, maybe afraid, or frankly feeling, I love this person. These emotions are happening, and transference is still somewhat of a mystery in many ways. However, you have been transferred to and are being transferred on, which can and will influence how you think and behave. It's critical to be mindful of that, because if you start liking a coachee very much or disliking a coachee very much, that will influence how you behave. That awareness is an enormous step in understanding, having to have this tabula rasa, this unbiased approach to enable people to help themselves. Understanding and recognizing transference is foundational to the coaching relationship, and the success as coaches potentially represents others. Very simply mean, I share with you and offer you to consider these ideas in the literature and realize, as people say to you, you remind me of something, or you are like somebody, and they start to project emotions on you, that frankly, you will become someone else to them. That's a completely different kind of conversation we have to have. However, you have a lot of power that you may not even realize you have, and you can say and do things that could be helpful or not, but you may not be the person speaking. So consider the reasons why people come to you as coaches. Diana is a master coach. Well, that's great. and she has a title as a master coach. Well, that's wonderful. So, but what does that mean? Well, it doesn't really mean anything. They may look at her bio or Ina's bio or Mikhail's bio, and that's wonderful. But you are often seen as being able to do some of the following. Diana may be seen as a knowledge expert, and they don't even know her. They don't even know what the knowledge is. They may be seeing your reputation and referral. People know who Mikhail is. He's got a reputation and he's got referral power. So they'll say, oh, I'm going to him because he is who he is. But we don't know if he can help at all. Explore personal and professional potential, to acquire knowledge, competencies, and skills. The coach is a familiar family representation. This will come out hopefully very clearly if they're coming to you to get better and ask permission to get better, ask permission to improve. You may be in that role and you don't know it. They may want to re-experience something with you to be able to, frankly, move forward and get progress. People will say, every time I speak to my manager, I feel like I'm 5 years old. I can't ask for what I want. Well, it's not unusual. However, the manager, resembles a bully in school who beat him up. You won't necessarily get that depth of understanding, but you will understand that there's something else going on that a simple coaching experience will help. You may have to refer them to someone to help them move forward. But these are the kinds of things that people may come to you with this idea. So think about your own practices and what you do. What and who else could you represent? Ask yourself when you walk in the room. You may find yourself, wow. Or when you're being dealt with by a master coach, who are they? Do they have knowledge power? Begin to understand the dynamics that are going on. They have to be questioned, because when a coachee comes to you, you have to figure out why they're coming to you. And that'll happen over time. And plus, figuring out with transference is who you may be as a coach, what your representation, how it influences someone. These are relatively deep, obviously, topics. At the same time, it would be unfair and unprofessional to say that this doesn't occur. Because when people come to you and say, I want to learn how to do X better, that's great. They may have to do 15 other things before they even get there. You think about an athletic coach. The coach wants to help them kick the ball in a certain way. However, the sports psychology of it may be in such a way where they need to get permission to do so. So these are some of the dimensions over time that in my practice and more psychodynamic practices orient, and I begin to have the coachees also do the work in reading about that. So these are elements of transference. If anybody has interest in that, you can obviously go to the literature, and I can provide literature for you if you'd like. But any questions about this presence or existence of transference in the coaching session that I can address now, or shall I continue? I will continue. The other element is resistance. As Freud said in 1906, that both transference and resistance are two pillars. Resistance is nothing but child's character. In other words, we all know what resistance is. If you have children, you know what it is. As you begin to go back in time, you may not remember your infancy, but the idea here of having resistance, and resistance starts in a pre-Oedipal environment. So you've been resisting things all your life and enabling things all your life. So resistance is an objectively tangible thing. In the last resort, the thing that stands in the way of the work. You and I have all resisted things. In that resistance, we both enable and disable ourselves. We have experiences and we don't have other experiences. These are oftentimes driven by value sets, belief systems, other kinds of things that may or may not make sense to you, but at end, it is resistance. So the resistance is a critical awareness to have, in as much as the resistance can, frankly, you'll find, and you may have found that you resist things as well as coachees resist things. So when people begin to talk about what it does, resistance is foundational to growth, and it's ubiquitous, meaning it's everywhere. We all experience, and that's how it's framed our lives. It enables and inhibits growth. It defends and defeats us. It's overt. It is recognizable. You can see it. I will not do that. Or it's covert. You just don't say anything. We've all been in relationships where people say no. Resistance, no. We've also been in relationships where nobody says anything, but it's still no. So this resistance on a coachee's piece, they are humans just like us. They have the functionality of resistance, cognitively as well as behaviorally. So this resistance is a way of pushing back against conditions, against impulses, suggestions, recommendations, demands, orders. A coachee will say, I'll say, I think you should read this book. I will not read this book. Resistance. An object-oriented question. Why not read the book? Well, I hate reading. And by the way, I hate you too. Whatever it is. But the idea is you're exploring that resistance. And resistance is a wonderful place to explore what they're thinking, to get a better understand how to help and in turn coach them. Many coaches say, oh, no, you have to do it. Just do it. It's not going to happen. So the idea of resistance, reflect on your own resistance patterns, because you have them and so do I. They do too. Depending on the role that you play, the resistance will typically align to that. So there's a relationship. So in a coaching relationship, resistance often manifests itself in opposition to a coaching process you've offered, or challenging coaching recommendations, or challenging you. Diana, what makes you a master coach? Why do you think you're so good? The last thing you would do is defend yourself. What you would do is ask, that's a critically important question. What should be said? So the idea is this pushback in coaching is real, and you may reflect in your own experience that you've had it. So it's a delicate place, but it really is. Personally, I love when resistance occurs, because it gives me the opportunity to ask, to explore it and why it's there. And they tell me so many things that I can say, if I say this or do that, or recommend this or that, perhaps it'll put them in a position where they can reflect more and, frankly, answer their own questions. Of course, there's material that I can have, there's things I can say, but I spend time with them exploring the resistance, because if I don't, I can say things all day and it won't mean a thing, because the resistance is still there. The last bullet is resistance can be viewed as a coachee's unconscious or conscious expressions, and their willingness to accept, to challenge, to grow, and to change. I think it may be fair to say that growing is not easy. As infants, our bones grow, and it's painful. And as adults, we go through relationships and education, and we go out of our comfort zones in many ways. At the same time, this is the willingness to do this, is the willingness to embrace change. And that's where the anthropological, sociological, philosophical areas come into play. And we can look back to various philosophers, et cetera, to be able to help us in the orientation to help and enable people to grow. So the resistance piece is critically important. It is present in everything we do. So I thought I would give you some actual things that happen. Coaches may resist putting thoughts and feelings into words. Remember the idea of saying everything? I want you to say, Diana, say everything. And what does that mean? Well, have you ever tried to say everything? That's how endless it is. However, coaches may consciously resist coaches in saying, I don't believe you. How do you know that that will help me? I don't want to try that. You may have that. And so people say, oh, sure, it's going to help you. Of course it will. Believe me. Well, they don't believe you and they're not going to try it. So you're in a position to say, you don't believe me. Okay. What is it about what has been said that you don't believe? How do you know it will help me? How do I know it will help you? Do you believe it will help you, or can it help you? I don't want to try that. If it was tried, what would happen? If it was tried, what would occur? And you'll notice that I don't say I in any of it, or you. What would happen if you tried it? I don't bring attention to the object. I don't bring attention to them. What would happen if it did happen? What would happen if it was tried? Some ideas. Coaches may unconsciously resist coaches, and this is where you need some training around this. But we know it with children. They don't complete homework assignments you give them. The age-old statement is, the dog ate my homework. It didn't happen, so they didn't do it. It got lost. They forget what was discussed. Remember last week we discussed X? Oh, I don't remember any of that. Or they just may leave you. I don't want to be here. She makes me so uncomfortable. Svetlana makes me uncomfortable. Not going to be here. I'm out of here. Considerations for your own practice, and in my practice, I explore coaches' resistance to coaching by the 5W1H questions and the ones I'm stemming for you here. I oftentimes present concrete examples of the resistance. Diana, it appears that resistance is present. The idea to do something is not appreciated. And I'll say it, boom, and let them react to the resistance that I see. That's a critical, because oftentimes they don't understand what they're resisting. But the idea of resistance is there. You have to find a way to address it, or it will always be there. And it will, frankly, it will disable your coaching. If these things get a little bit too involved, get supervision from an ICU master trainer, or frankly, speak to Mikhail or someone else and get outside referral. Because when you start getting into these areas, they may be beyond some of the knowledge, competence, and skills that people have. So we have to be careful. So that's why do not engage resistant behaviors unless you're professionally qualified to do so. It can be just fine to talk to somebody, and that's fine. But in this presentation, you need to have some background in this to be able to explore the coaching and specifically the resistance in a way that will enable coaches to move forward. I'll stop for just a minute. I have just about 5 minutes left, then we're done. Any questions? I noticed there's something in the chat, and unfortunately, my Russian isn't so good. I think it's about 11. So are we going to be done around 11? Something like that. Sorry. Ina, I'm sorry. It's not, unfortunately. But anyway, let me keep going. Diane, if you could translate, that'd be helpful, or should I keep going?
You can keep going. Thank you so much for the masterclass, and yes, continue.
I'm going to keep going. I'm almost done. The last part is repetition compulsion. And this, I really enjoy this one most. Repetition compulsion is the idea of we are what we repeatedly do. We are what we repeatedly do. Even though that was attributed to Socrates, it is not him. Repetition compulsion being, again, a Freudian, coming back to this notion. Freud's 1914 essay, Remembering, Repeating, and Working Through, is some of the foundational material to this idea of the need to repetition compulsion, or the need to compulsion to repeat things, repeat things, repeat things, repeat things. The compulsion to repeat life experience is typically reparative, meaning to repair something in your life, to be retributive, to get back at somebody in your life, or to be restorative, to go back to a more nurturing environment. In the coaching relationship, people who we coach, and we as well, are humans and have this function of repetition compulsion. Think of this for a moment. Have you ever said to yourself, why do I keep going on a date with the same kind of guy or gal every single time? It winds up the same time. We go on a date and it doesn't work. Why do I keep going after the same people? Why do I go after the same friends and it doesn't work out? This idea of repeating, I think it's fair to say you all have repetition compulsion, as I do too. We have a need to go back and experience things to, frankly, to try to make it better. I wish I was able to go back and say goodbye. I wish to be retributive. I wish I could go back and shoot them. Or restorative, I wish I had more time with my mother or my father to have a more nurturing relationship. While these are psychological and psychoanalytic concepts, in truth and in fact, they are in the coaching room with you. So the idea of repetition compulsion is a complex condition that can be recognized. And if you start thinking about this, it can be a self-defeating dimension that can negatively influence performance. These are some of the things that occur. These are some of the things that occur. If repetition compulsion is going on, they will come and say things to this like you know, I can never get past not performing well, and I keep on going back to my childhood experiences in my every job, and I just can't get it done. I keep on going back. I keep on going back. I keep on going back. All of us know that we have difficult things occur in our lives. How many friends do we go to and tell the same story over and over and over again? We say we want to get clarity, but we are going back to the experience to re-experience it, to see what we could have done, to see what or to hurt someone. So the idea this can be self-defeating behavior and not move you through, it's another form of resistance. So it could cause maladaptive behaviors. It can be self-defeating ideation, I can't do well. And it could be ineffective behaviors. I also make a caution here that do not engage these unless you have some degree of professional training to be qualified to do so. What I thought I'd do then is give you some real experiences. Is these three areas, and if you want to know more, I have an article that I can send you, about 700 words that I wrote several years ago on this in business, and it's very clear. The idea of repairing relationships, why we go back, and why a coachee may come to you as a transference figure or symbolic figure, and to want to connect to something in the past issue. They may say, in my past leadership experiences, I was unable to earn others' respect. I continue to revisit and analyze these experiences so I can figure out how to repair it. I continue to revisit and analyze these experiences. This is repetition compulsion at play, moving back to a place where you can potentially repair something. Another one is this idea of retributive or retribution, getting even, or even being punished. In my past leadership experiences, I was unable to earn others' respect. I continue to revisit and analyze these experiences so I can argue with everyone and get respect. They're going to revisit and analyze, and they're going to argue. So they're going to get retribution. Restorative, which is more of a nurturing experience, positive experience. In my past leadership experiences, I was unable to get others' respect. I continue to revisit and analyze these experiences and think of ways what my mentor told me to gain respect, what my mentor told me I should do. It's more restorative. While these may be relatively complex, they're not that complex, but you need to know more about them. This is fundamental to the coaching relationship, because when coachees come to you with problems or desires or goals, this material is present. Transference is present, resistance is present, and repetition compulsion is present. And we oftentimes wonder why coaching fails or doesn't have a long-term durability. It's much of this, but people never see it. So that's the end. With the overview of giving you a little bit of insight into the industry, then a little bit about my practice, what I do, and my orientations as a trainer, then to give you the insight into transference, resistance, and repetition compulsion. to at least be aware that these elements are present in your coaching. It's an important first step to perhaps in learning more and bringing these concepts into your work. So Winston Churchill says always that this is not the end, nor is it the beginning of the end, but perhaps it's the end of the beginning. It's not the end, nor is it the beginning of the end, but perhaps it's the end of the beginning. And it's my hope that we can take this material forward. We can learn more together. I'm happy to speak to any of you in greater length, provide you material. And the way we began this, Diana was courteous and generous to say, I'll be coming to Luxembourg next year, so I'll be more than happy to have many cups of coffee with people on here today. So I'm going to thank you very much for your time and attention. My email is to the bottom right, if you would like it. And I will open it up to any questions or input. Thank you.